red hair makes it would it be too
Everybody see this? This little cone. There's a whole bunch of these on the ground here. This is the cone for this tree. This is a cypress tree. Cypress is C-Y-P-R-E-S-S. And what you'll notice about it is, this is the seed cone, and the scales are different looking. On the pine, they're kind of flat and wedge-shaped. On the cypress, each scale is shaped kind of like a thumbtack, kind of like the sporangiophores on the horsetail. There's a flat head and then kind of a stalk underneath. So the shape of the scales is different. It's also a smaller cone. The male cones, you can see on these little branches, these little swollen tips they have. They're these little tiny swollen tips, maybe just a millimeter or two long. Those are the male cones. And when they get old enough, they'll release their pollen and they'll fall apart. So that's the seed cone, those are the pollen cones. Another weird thing about this plant is you don't really see the leaves unless you look really close. What you're seeing here are branches, stems branching. To see the leaves, you got to look really close. And what you'll see are these little scaly things. It almost looks like scaly skin of a fish or a snake or the feet of a bird, something like that. And those little scales are the leaves. The leaves are very small. They're not needles. Pines have needles. These don't. Okay? This makes it very recognizable. It's easy to tell this group of plants. This is the cypress family. Not the pine family, the cypress family. And these are Italian cypresses. That's the common name of this species. In fact, it grows side by side with the Italian stone pine in the Mediterranean. Okay? Cypresses are plants that like mild temperatures. They grow near the coast where it never gets too cold. But there's another genus. These are the junipers. Junipers, we're going to see one in a minute. They look a lot like cypresses. But junipers, instead of this woody cone, it looks like a berry. It's actually fleshy and softish and kind of edible. And that's called a juniper berry. It's really a cone that's fleshy. So you can always tell a cypress and a juniper apart by the female cones. If it's woody, it's a cypress. If it's a fleshy berry-like thing, it's a juniper. Junipers basically look the same. The difference is they grow in really harsh conditions. They grow in the deserts. They grow on the mountaintops where it gets super cold. So those are different genera. They're two different genus. This is the genus Cupressus. That's the genus Juniperus. They're two different kinds of plants. They're both in the cypress family, though. In California, we have a whole bunch of native cypresses. From the Mexican border to the Oregon border, all along the coast, we have native cypresses here. The Monterey cypress is the most famous. If you go to Half Moon Bay or anywhere on the coast, you're going to see Monterey cypresses that have been planted everywhere. They have this windswept look to them, very pretty. But cypresses in California is a big topic. Most of them are rare and endangered, actually. If you go inland to the deserts, we have 2 or 3 junipers. We have the California juniper, the Utah juniper, and the western juniper. And those are more desert plants. So we have them all here native in California. Okay. Let's go over here. Okay, this one right here. Okay, this one.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Just trying to push in front of everyone.
Here's the cone, a little tiny cone. There's another cone here. They're all over the ground. It's a small cone. You can see them hanging off the tree. This is the seed cone. And if you compared it to the cypress cone and the pine cone, you're going to see it's actually much more like the cypress cone. The scales are, again, they're kind of wedge-shaped, but they have a head on them like a thumbtack. We have a fancy word in botany for that, which I'm not giving you. So it looks a lot like a cypress cone. If you look at the leaves, they look like needles, but they're a little different. They're flat. They're not round like on a pine. So, and I lied to you a little bit about the cypresses. If I prune that cypress and let new tissue grow, real young tissue, the newest growth has little needle-like leaves. And then when it gets older, it drops those and gets the scales. And those needle-like leaves look a lot like these. What I'm trying to say is this is a lot more like a cypress than it is like a pine. It used to be in its own family. This is a redwood tree. And it used to be in the redwood family. Again, these are all conifers, all Coniferophyta we're talking about. All the same phylum so far. All woody trees. But the DNA evidence showed clearly that these are cypresses. So today, redwoods are considered to be part of the cypress family. It's not a great fit, but that's what we have. So you've got those cones like that, and when it drops the needles, it doesn't drop them one by one. It drops a whole branch like this onto the ground. So you see these branchlets everywhere. That's a sign of a redwood tree. Okay. We have two redwoods. This is a California native. It's called the coast redwood. That's the common name, the coast redwood. And it grows on the coast from about Santa Barbara County to Del Norte County. So it grows from about Santa Barbara up to the Oregon border. It does not get into Oregon. This is strictly a California species. And if you go inland, it only goes inland a mile or so. Not far at all, just very little. It hugs the coastline. This species cannot take cold weather. And it needs a lot of fog. It lives in the fog belt. Okay? So what are some famous examples? Muir Woods in Marin County, Mount Tamalpais. A lot of tourists, they go to San Francisco, they want to see redwood trees. They get on a bus and they go to the Muir Woods. Okay? That's probably more people in the world have seen the Muir Woods redwoods than any other kind of redwood. For local people, it's probably Santa Cruz and the Big Basin Redwood Park, where you can go camping. That's a big area with huge redwood trees. Very popular. There's another big one up the coast called Pfeiffer Redwoods. It's a big park people camp at. You've been to Fort Bragg up in Mendocino County. That's all redwoods everywhere. Everywhere you go, like Van Dam State Park. Anyway, it's not hard to go camp among these trees. There's lots of campgrounds. They tend to be crowded and popular. You can get reservations way ahead. These are some interesting trees for several reasons. One is they're the tallest trees in the world. They hold the record for the tallest living things. 370 feet approximately is the tallest coast redwood. And that occurs somewhere in Santa Cruz County, and the location is a secret. You don't want people going in there and cutting off chunks of the tree for souvenirs. Anyway, it's the tallest living thing in the world, right here in Central and Northern California. Right? It's not the biggest living thing in the world. That's the giant sequoia that grows in the Sierras. I'll talk about that in a second. The other thing that's special about it, it's our state tree. Every state in the United States has a tree. a state tree. And our state tree is the redwood tree. It's on our quarter, the California quarter, the redwood trees on there, this species. But the question is, which redwood? We have two redwoods. We have this one and the giant sequoia, which is a different species and a different genus, actually. And it lives up in the Sierras. Closest place to us is Calaveras Big Trees State Park, which is on Highway 4. It's very close to Stockton. It's at about 4,000 feet elevation. It gets a lot of snow. And that is the northernmost grove of the giant sequoia if you want to go see them. We're very close. If you go south from there, there are a couple little groves here and there. The big one is Sequoia National Park, which is in Sequoia National Forest, which is up above Fresno, basically. It's east of Fresno. And there's a whole state or national park devoted to that species. Giant sequoia is the largest living thing as far as biomass. If you could take the biggest tree and put it on a scale and weigh it, it would be the largest living thing on Earth. So California has two redwoods, and each one sets a record, height and biomass. We also have a conifer that sets the record for the oldest living thing in the world. That's a pine tree called the bristlecone pine, and that lives in the White Mountains north of Death Valley, almost on the Nevada border. That's eastern California, and those trees live to almost 5,000 years. Okay, and you can go see all of these species, the oldest, the biggest, and the tallest in California. All right, so this species, what's it used for? It's a major species for logging. The wood is used to make decking material, siding for houses. It's used to make outdoor furniture. The wood is beautiful. It's easy to work. It's decay and insect resistant. And it's also expensive. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on, but maybe 10 years ago, if you wanted to buy redwood to build a fence, it cost a fortune. And so what everybody would do is they would buy cedar, which is really a juniper, and they would build fences out of cedar wood, which is half the price. Today, they don't sell cedar wood. It's all redwood. It's 100% redwood. So you don't have a choice. If you want to build a deck or a fence, it's redwood, and the price has gone down. So it must be all the management practices managing the redwood forest, but the price is not as high as it was, and it's pretty much all you're going to get now. I wanted to give you the scientific name, and the genus is Sequoia. That's spelled S-E-Q-U-O-I-A, S-E-Q-U-O-I-A, Sequoia. And that's named after a man. He was a Cherokee Indian living in Arkansas well over 150 years ago. And what he did was he took the Cherokee Indian language, which had no writing, it wasn't a written language, and he created written syllables for each sound in the language and turned it into a written language. His name was Sequoia, and it ended with a Y-A-H. It's spelled a little differently than the genus, but this tree is named after him. Okay. The second part of the scientific name is called the specific epithet. Okay. Scientific names have a genus name and then a specific epithet. The genus is Sequoia. The epithet is sempervirens. S-E-M-P-E-R-V-I-R-E-N-S. Sempervirens. What does semper mean?
Always.
Always. And virens? Green. Viridis. Green. It means always green, and the other way we could say that is evergreen. Evergreen species do not lose their leaves in the fall, and they go all year with their leaves. The cypress is an evergreen, the pine is an evergreen, redwoods are evergreens, but something like that oak tree right there, which is right, that scrawny tree right there, that loses its leaves. And those pear trees we looked at up against the building, they lose their leaves. And this guy right here, it loses its leaves. And lots of them lose their leaves in the fall. Those are called deciduous species, deciduous trees. Deciduous means they lose their leaves in the fall. Evergreen, they don't. Sequoia sempervirens, the coast redwood. The Italian cypress also has the epithet sempervirens, meaning evergreen.